Year 1937. Over the Pacific Ocean, one of the most famous female pilots in history was preparing for her final flight. She was 40 years old. She was about to complete her journey around the world. A navigator was flying with her. The two were traveling around the world along the equator in a small twin-engine aircraft. This flight was an attempt at a record that would go down in aviation history. It was the second day of July. The plane had taken off from Papua New Guinea. The target was a tiny island in the middle of the Pacific, Howland Island. They needed to fly 3,000 kilometers to reach it. The island was small, only 2 kilometers long. It was like a dot in the middle of the ocean. But they had to reach it. They would refuel there and continue their journey. Radio contact had been established. A Coast Guard ship was waiting near the island. The pilot was sending regular radio messages. The first hours passed without problems. But over time, the messages began to lose clarity. The pilot said they could not see the island. Fuel was running low. Her voice was becoming more and more worried. The final radio message came at 8:30 in the morning. The pilot said they could not find the island and were flying along a straight line. Their position was unclear. She reported that the fuel was almost gone. Then, silence. No one ever heard from them again. The Coast Guard ship called for hours. There was no answer. A search operation began immediately. 9 ships and 65 aircraft were deployed. It was the largest search operation in ocean history up to that time. It lasted 2 weeks. An area of 400,000 square kilometers was searched. Nothing was found. No wreckage, no life vests, no fuel slick, nothing at all. Theories began to appear. Some believed the plane had run out of fuel and crashed into the sea. Others blamed a navigation error. Some said they might have landed on an unknown island. Others even created espionage stories. But no theory could be proven. The pilot and the navigator were officially declared missing. The aircraft was never found. Years later, pieces of metal were discovered on various islands. DNA tests were conducted. Bone fragments were examined. But none of them gave a definite result. 80 years have passed. No one still knows what happened. Somewhere in the depths of the Pacific Ocean, that plane and the 2 people inside it remain lost. And this disappearance continues to be one of the greatest mysteries in aviation history. Year 1945. 5 torpedo bomber planes took off from the coast of Florida for a training flight. There were 14 crew members in total. All were experienced soldiers. It was a routine exercise. They would follow a route over the Atlantic, conduct bombing practice, and return to base. The weather was clear. Visibility was good. There was no expectation of danger. The flight began at 2 in the afternoon. The first 2 hours passed without incident. Radio contact was regular. They remained in constant communication with the base. But at 4 o'clock, something changed. A message came from the lead pilot. He said their compasses were not working. They did not know where they were. They could not determine their position. The base commander tried to give them instructions. He told them to fly west, but the pilot was unsure which direction was west. Everything looked wrong. Another pilot spoke up. Leadership changed, but the situation did not improve. The radio messages became more and more confused. Around 6 in the evening, the final message came in. They were running out of fuel. They were preparing to land on the sea. Then the radio went silent. The base panicked. A rescue aircraft was sent immediately. It was a large plane with a crew of 13. It took off into the night, and it also vanished, without leaving any trace. The next morning, a massive search operation began. More than 100 planes and ships were deployed. The Atlantic Ocean was searched. It lasted for days. No wreckage was found, no fuselage, No life rafts, no crew. 27 people had disappeared in a single night. 5 aircraft and 1 rescue plane had vanished without a trace. The official explanation pointed to navigation error and bad weather. But the weather had been good that day. The pilots were experienced. Why had the compasses of 5 separate planes failed at the same time? Why was no wreckage ever found? What happened to the rescue aircraft? No satisfying answers were ever given. Even after 80 years, the incident remains a mystery. Some speak of magnetic anomalies. Some blame human error. Others say the ocean swallowed the wreckage. But there is no definite answer. There is only one radio recording. And in it, the confused voices of lost pilots. Lost forever. Year 2014. A passenger jet took off at midnight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. There were 239 people on board. It was a routine flight. The aircraft was large and modern. It had every safety system. The crew was experienced. No one expected anything unusual. 40 minutes after takeoff, the plane reached the handover point between Malaysian and Vietnamese airspace. The pilot wished Malaysian Air Control good night. It was his final message. 1 minute later, the aircraft's transponder was turned off. The plane disappeared from radar. Vietnamese Air Control never saw it. Hours passed. The plane did not arrive in Beijing. Families waited at the airport. No news came. By morning, panic had begun. The aircraft was missing. No one knew where it was. The transponder was off. The radio was silent. 239 people had vanished into the air. An international search operation began. Dozens of countries joined in. The South China Sea was searched. But the plane was not there. Military radars were examined. It was discovered the aircraft had changed course. It had turned southwest. It had passed over Malaysia and flown toward the Indian Ocean. But why? Satellite data was analyzed. It was revealed that the plane had continued flying for hours. Southward, into the depths of the ocean. It had flown until its fuel was exhausted. Then it had crashed somewhere. But where? The Indian Ocean is vast and extremely deep. Search efforts continued for years. Millions of dollars were spent. The ocean floor was scanned. Underwater robots were deployed. 3 years later, some debris was found on the coast of Africa. It was confirmed to belong to the aircraft. But where was the plane itself? Where was the main wreckage? In 2017, the official search was suspended. Nothing had been found. Families are still waiting for answers. The world continues to search for the greatest mystery in aviation history. Did the plane change course deliberately? Was there a technical failure? Was there a problem with the crew? No one knows. 10 years have passed. 239 people are still missing. A modern aircraft, with all its technology, lies somewhere in the depths of the ocean. And this disappearance reminds us that unanswered questions still exist in aviation. Some mysteries cannot be solved. Some losses are never found. And some planes, along with their crews, remain lost forever.